This HOO nightmare started with Karen, who wrecked my trash can 57 times using her $60,000 Escalade. So I swapped it out for a concrete bin and sat back while she ended up wrecking her own SUV instead. What began as her morning routine of destroying my property turned into criminal charges, a $12,000 payout, and one brutally expensive reminder that she picked the wrong neighbor to push around. Picture this: the sharp crack of plastic snapping through the early morning quiet, followed by the grinding scrape of a bumper dragging across asphalt. A pearl white Escalade speeds away, leaving my driveway littered with garbage like party confetti all over again. But here's the thing about bullies: what they never see coming is a victim who fights back with real solid proof. By the time I was through, this self-proclaimed compliance officer had wrecked her own car, uncovered her $47,000 embezzlement scheme, and learned firsthand that not every neighbor bows to a clipboard and fake authority. Honestly, what would you do if the person next door decided to play demolition derby with your stuff every single morning? Think about it. Now let me rewind and explain how it all started. My name's Marcus Holloway. I'm 45, a licensed electrician for more than 2 decades. Recently divorced and locked in a custody battle over my 2 teenagers, Emma, 16, and Tyler, 14. We live in Pinewood Gardens, one of those suburban Ohio neighborhoods with an HOA that insists every lawn must be trimmed exactly 2.5 inches, and your mailbox can only come in 3 approved shades. I bought a corner lot house 3 years ago, right after the divorce papers were signed. I figured it was a fresh start. The kids would each get their own room, decent schools, and a safe community. What I didn't account for was Brenda Whitmore. She's 52, a widow, and self-installed herself as our neighborhood's compliance watchdog, a position that doesn't even exist in the HOA bylaws. Brenda drives a pearl white Escalade the size of a studio apartment, and she moved her around the same time I did after her husband passed. No kids, retired from managing a downtown bank, and she knows every HOO rule word for word. Worse, she's best friends with Gerald Thornfield, the HOA president, which basically shields her from accountability. Here's why the layout of my property matters. My corner lot means the city requires me to put my trash bin by the curb every Tuesday morning, no more than 3 feet from the street. That just happens to be right along Brenda's morning walking route at precisely 6:15 a.m. The first incident happened one Tuesday in September, second week into the school year. I was making coffee, getting the kids ready with the garbage truck. Still 20 minutes out. Then came that cracked plastic splitting like a gunshot. I ran outside to find my trash can obliterated, garbage strewn across the driveway like someone set off a bomb filled with banana peels and coffee grounds. And there was Brenda backing up in her Escalade, rolling down her window with a fake look of concern. "Oh my," she said, dripping with insincerity. "These streets are just so narrow. Hope you weren't too attached to that old thing. Old thing." I'd bought the can the week before $23 at Home Depot. Still, I let it go. Figured it had to be an accident. I spent 20 minutes scooping soggy cereal boxes and coffee filters off the driveway while the diesel exhaust from the truck choked the air. Emma and Tyler stood at the window, embarrassed, watching their dad crawling around in pajamas cleaning garbage. That week it happened 3 more times. Same setup, same time, 6:15 a.m. sharp. The roar of her oversized SUV, the crunch of steel into plastic, and silence as she drove off. By Friday, I wasn't guessing anymore. And by the next Tuesday, I knew without a doubt it was deliberate. My neighbor across the street, Mrs. Olivia, finally confirmed it. In her careful English, she told me she takes the long way on purpose. Plenty of space on the other side, but always she drives close to your bin. So I tried confronting Brenda. Caught her mid-patrol one afternoon. "Hey, about the trash can situation." But she cut me off with a syrupy smile. "Marcus, I understand you're new to community living. These streets were built for regular vehicles, not oversized bins blocking traffic. Perhaps you should consider placement timing adjustments." Placement timing adjustments, like there's some magic hour when the garbage truck doesn't still need the bin at the curb. That night, I started digging through HOA bylaws, municipal codes, and property rights. Turns out trash cans on the public right-of-way are still private property. Even better, our HOA has zero regulations about what they're made of or what time they can be placed. Only that they can't be left out except on collection day. By the end of the month, I'd replaced 4 bins, $92 total. The kids were stressed out by the daily drama, and even the custody evaluator had started noting neighborhood stability concerns. Something had to give. That's when Brenda began smirking. She'd make direct eye contact during her morning drive-bys, with this little satisfied grin that told me she knew exactly what she was doing. Game on. By mid-October, Brenda escalated from smashing trash cans to full-blown psychological warfare. I came home from the construction site and spotted a certified letter waiting on the counter, the kind that makes your stomach knot before you even break the seal. The envelope was heavy, the paper inside thick and expensive, and the sharp scent of fresh ink told me right away this wasn't some recycled form notice. It read in stiff legal jargon, "Improper trash receptacle placement creating a traffic hazard. Section 4.7.3, no obstruction of vehicular traffic patterns." The deadline was clear fix it in 72 hours or rack up $50 in daily fines. She obviously pushed this through fast, hoping to catch me off guard while the board was still stunned from the evidence I'd laid out at the last meeting. Luckily, years of solving electrical code puzzles had trained me for situations just like this. When something doesn't line up, you keep digging. That evening, I tore into municipal code like I was tracking a hidden short. 3 hours of cross-checking. City ordinances against county regulations finally paid off. Jackpot. City rules specifically required trash bins to be placed within 3 feet of the curb on pickup day. Even better, the HOS reach ended at the property line. They had zero authority over the public right-of-way. I even remembered a case I'd read online where a California homeowner had won against their HOA using the same exact argument. I spent the entire weekend prepping my defense like I was sitting for the electrical contractor's exam all over again. Angled the Ring doorbell just right to capture the routine in the mornings. $47 for peace of mind. I even got a professional survey proving my bin was in full compliance with city rules. Mrs. Olivia reluctantly gave me a written statement too, her hands trembling as she signed. "I don't want any trouble," she whispered, "but this isn't right." Meanwhile, Brenda was hard at work staging her case on social media. She filled the Nextdoor feed with dramatic posts about reckless homeowners endangering children and dangerous corner obstacles forcing drivers into traffic. The comments lit up her 3 loyal cheerleaders against everyone else, calling her delusional. Then came the twist that showed just how desperate she'd become. My buddy Dave at City Hall, he works in permits, and we've done electrical jobs together, called me up Tuesday morning. "You'll like this one," he said, laughing. The city had gotten 4 separate complaints about my dangerous corner. 4 different supposed witnesses, all filed within 15 minutes at 2:47 a.m., the kicker. Every one of them was written of same style. "Either your neighborhood is crawling with insomniacs who all write the same way," Dave chuckled, "or somebody's burning the midnight oil trying to frame you." By Thursday's HOA meeting, I'd assembled a binder so thick it could choke a horse. The community center reeked of industrial carpet cleaner and stale bureaucracy. A dozen homeowners showed up record attendance. President Thornfield kept tugging at his tie every half minute. Brenda sat at the board's table in a navy blazer screaming serious business, though her hand trembled when she lifted her water glass. She knew what was coming. When old business was called, I stood and raised my folder. I'd like to address the violation notice concerning trash can placement. The fluorescent lights buzzed as the room went silent. I read the city ordinance word for word, then presented the survey results proving full compliance. The final blow was casually dropping my consultation with Amanda Sterling, a property rights lawyer who had fought dozens of HOA battles. She found the selective enforcement patterns here especially troubling, I said, watching Brenda go pale. Thornfield coughed into his hand 3 times before stammering. "We'll need additional review. Let's table this matter. Translation?" They had nothing, and everyone knew it, but Brenda wasn't finished. As people filtered out, she cornered me in the parking lot under the humming security lights. That's when her mask slipped. "You think you're clever?" She spat, loud enough for a dozen neighbors to hear. "People like you move into decent neighborhoods and think the rules don't apply." "Well, I've got news for you. This is only the beginning," Mrs. Rodriguez gasped. Jim Torres, the maintenance guy, suddenly found his keys very interesting. The racial undertones were as thick as the humid October air. My phone, tucked into my shirt pocket, recorded every poisonous word. That night, Emma asked why the mean lady hated us. Tyler wanted to know if we'd have to move again. I tucked them into bed, promising everything would be fine, though privately I was tallying the costs of this War III replacement bins. 14 hours of paperwork, rising attorney fees, but something had shifted. Neighbors were whispering about board overreach, questioning the selective enforcement. Brenda's public outburst had exposed what many already suspected. This wasn't about safety. It was about control. The very next morning, her tactics changed. Instead of barreling past my bin, Brenda slowed her SUV to a crawl, inspecting it like a general scoping out her next battle. The game was evolving. November arrived with biting cold, and Brenda escalated. While I was still congratulating myself on winning round 1, she was combing through the HOA handbook like a prosecutor digging through case law. The violations came in waves. First, a letter citing my lawn measured at 2.75 inches, a scandalous 1/4 inch over the 2.5 limit. Next, my mailbox color, no longer heritage blue, but now an unauthorized weathered navy. Then came 3 tiny tears in my window screens, practically invisible without a magnifying glass. Each fine was $50, payable within 10 days. I grabbed my tape measure and camera and spent a Saturday documenting the entire neighborhood. 14 houses had the same issues: Gerald Thornfield's grass nearly 3 inches, Mrs. Patterson's mailbox faded to the same shade, half of Maple Street with hail-damaged screens. Yet, somehow, only mine had been flagged. While Brenda drowned herself in bylaw enforcement, I was having coffee with Dale Kowalski at Home Depot's contractor desk. Dale's been pouring concrete for 23 years. When I mentioned the trash bin fiasco, he grinned knowingly. "You know, nothing in city code says your trash can has to be plastic. Concrete works just fine, long as it meets size requirements." That sparked an idea Brenda would come to regret. 60 pounds of concrete mix, some steel rebar, and a plastic shell modified just enough to pass as standard. Total costs, $47, far less than the hundreds in fines she was stacking against me. But first, I tackled her harassment. I spent Tuesday night photographing every violation identical to mine. Wednesday morning, I filed an official complaint with the board, citing selective enforcement. Bureaucrats hate it when you turn their own systems on them, and my move forced them to either apply the rules evenly or admit they were targeting me. Either way, Brenda lost ground. Then I noticed something even darker. Over the last year, she'd issued 67 violation notices. 49 of them were against single parents, elderly residents, or minorities. Only 18 went to married couples or longtime homeowners. The bias was blatant. Fair Housing Act violations are serious enough to draw federal eyes. Just imagining Brenda explaining that pattern to a civil rights lawyer made me smile for the first time in weeks. Friday afternoon, I began my concrete project. Emma and Tyler laughed as they helped me mix cement in the garage, classic rock humming from my paint-speckled radio. The sharp alkaline smell of curing cement pulled me back to when I helped my dad pour our basement floor decades ago. We built the thing's sturdy, hollowed base for weight balance, drainage holes to keep it functional, outside identical to every other bin on the street. From the curb, it was just another trash can. Inside, it was a steel-reinforced tank. Monday morning, I rolled it into place, same spot as always. At 6:15 sharp, I heard Brenda's engine growl. She approached slower this time, suspicious but determined. The first hit came at about 15 miles per hour. Instead of the usual crunch of cheap plastic, there was a deep thunk followed by the screech of metal against concrete. Her SUV's running board bent like foil. My bin stood unmoved. From my kitchen window, coffee in hand, I watched her sit frozen in the driver's seat. After half a minute, she tried again from another angle. Same result, more damage to her vehicle, none to mine. My trash can fortress was completely legal, and Brenda had finally met her immovable object. No city laws were violated, no HOA guidelines ignored, just a homeowner upgrading his trash bin with sturdier materials. If she insisted on ramming it repeatedly, that was her choice, along with her insurance claim to deal with. Over the following week, Brenda grew more desperate in her attempts to wreck my concrete creation. Every impact left new scrapes and dents on her pearl white Escalade, while my reinforced can stood proudly untouched. The irony was almost sweet. Her aggression was slowly destroying the very SUV she was using as a weapon. By Friday, she'd racked up nearly $800 worth of damage on her car. My bin? Just a few scuffs that gave it even more character. The neighborhood was buzzing, and for once, Brenda wasn't the one controlling the story. By mid-November, she had gone from being the local busybody to acting like some kind of amateur private investigator. Her obsession with my trash can was so intense, I wouldn't be surprised if she was sketching conspiracy charts about it in her sleep. I'd catch her Escalade, now covered in scratches and dents, rolling by my place at odd hours, like some suburban stalker. The first real clue of her new investigation came one Tuesday morning when Mrs. Olivia phoned me, her voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus, that woman was in your driveway last night with a flashlight and some kind of scale. I saw her from my window. She was trying to weigh your trash can." I nearly burst out laughing at the image. Brenda, probably dressed in her navy blazer and sensible shoes, sneaking onto my property at midnight with a bathroom scale, all to solve the mystery of my indestructible trash bin. What she really needed was a hobby that didn't involve trespassing. Her efforts only escalated as the week went on. Jim Torres, our maintenance guy, mentioned she cornered him at the hardware store, interrogating him about concrete purchases and asking which neighbors had bought unusual supplies lately. She even started lurking on my social media pages, hoping to find clues about my weekend projects. The most desperate move came when she tried to drag city bureaucracy into it again. On Thursday afternoon, a weary-looking inspector named Pete showed up at my door. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Got a complaint about possible code violations," he sighed, scribbling half-heartedly on his clipboard. "Something about unauthorized concrete structures on your property." I walked him over to the trash can. He gave it about 30 seconds. of attention before shaking his head. It's a garbage bin, not a building foundation. No permits needed, no violations here. Honestly, I've seen people build full sheds with less scrutiny than this. But Brenda wasn't done with her campaign of harassment. The next week, I received a notice from the HOA demanding immediate access to my property for compliance. Checks. The letter, clearly written by Brenda and rubber-stamped by President Thornfield, claimed they had to verify my modifications for safety issues. Luckily, my deep dive into property rights after her first complaint had prepared me. I'd studied court rulings, including Narrett v. Lakeside Village, where judges decided HOAs couldn't just wander onto private property unless there was clear cause or an emergency. My reply was polite but firm. No entry without a court order or genuine emergency. If they wanted to inspect my trash bin, they could do so from the public sidewalk like everyone else. The satisfaction of knowing Brenda was stewing over that was almost as good as pouring fresh concrete. Meanwhile, her Escalade was turning into a billboard for the power of steel-reinforced construction. Every morning brought new evidence of her failed collisions. The running board now sagged like a broken wing. Her bumper was cracked like spider glass, and one headlight rattled dangerously. With each drive-by, the neighbors were paying attention too. On my Saturday coffee run, I overheard 3 separate conversations about that crazy woman who keeps smashing her car into the same trash can. Mrs. Rodriguez had even started timing Brenda's routine, while the teens on Elm Street reportedly created a betting pool on the daily crash results. Emma thought the whole saga was both hilarious and embarrassing. Dad, kids at school are asking if we're the family with the concrete trash can lady, she told me over dinner. I can't decide whether to hide or brag that we have the coolest revenge story in town. Tyler, ever the entrepreneur, had another idea. Seriously, Dad, we could charge $5 a head and pay for my college front row seats to the daily demolition derby. The turning point came when Patricia Lopez, the only reasonable board member, pulled me aside after a community meeting. Speaking quietly near the coffee station, she revealed what Brenda had been up to. Marcus, you should know Brenda's been holding private meetings with Gerald. She's pushing the board to grant new enforcement powers, things like random property inspections, material restrictions, even background checks for contractors. But Patricia's final revelation hit harder than all the rest. She's also lobbying for approval of maintenance contracts with some company I've never even heard of. Every time the budget came up, she always had polished proposals ready to go, as if she'd been planning them for months. That night, I decided to run a different kind of investigation. If Brenda was so fixated on steering neighborhood projects and pushing certain contractors, maybe it wasn't just about authority. Maybe it was about money. Public records can reveal a lot if you know where to dig. And municipal contract databases tell fascinating stories about who's getting paid and why. By Sunday night, I'd uncovered something that made her obsession with my trash can look trivial. Brenda Whitmore wasn't just a micromanaging busybody, she was orchestrating a scheme. And without realizing it, my concrete fortress had put her entire operation at risk. Normally, Sunday nights were for helping Emma with history papers or working through algebra problems with Tyler, but this evening, I was buried in the city's public contract database, following a hunch Patricia Lopez had planted in my head like a thorn. I started simple, searching for recent business filings tied to the Whitmore name. What I found made me set down my coffee and lean closer to the screen. Whitmore Construction LLC, formed just 6 months ago with Brenda listed as a 40% owner, and her husband Richard as president. The timeline made my skin crawl. The company launched in May. Their first HOA maintenance contract bid came in July, and Brenda's harassment campaign against me began in early September. The connections practically drew themselves with surgical precision. For the next 2 hours, I kept digging through records, uncovering details that would make a forensic accountant jump with excitement. In just 4 months, Whitmore Construction had snagged 7 HOA maintenance contracts, landscaping, sidewalk fixes, touch-ups at the community center, playground upkeep altogether totaling $23,400. The bidding patterns were what exposed the truth. On every single project, Whitmore Construction had undercut competitors by exactly $50 to $100. Not enough to raise suspicion, but just enough to secure the win. It was like watching someone play poker with a stacked deck technically within. The rules, but unmistakably rigged. And here's the part that sent my electrician's brain into overdrive. Brenda herself had voted to approve every one of those contracts. 7 votes, 7 approvals. 7 payments funneled directly into her family's business. The conflict of interest was so glaring it may as well have been flashing in neon. I remembered from my earlier legal research that board members have a fiduciary duty to disclose any financial interest in vendor contracts. Failing to do so isn't just unethical, it's a violation of state nonprofit corporation law, opening the door to civil suits and criminal fraud charges. The evidence was right there in black and white. Business registration papers, a HOA meeting, minutes, contract award logs, and bank deposit slips from the association's statements. Brenda had turned her board position into a pipeline, channeling homeowner dues straight into her family's bank account. But the timeline revealed something even more damning than the first polite conversation I'd had with her about the trash can. September 15th, the first time I raised questions about the maintenance budget. The board meeting on September 3rd. Just 12 days after that, she launched her harassment campaign. My concrete trash can hadn't just been an obstacle in her morning routine, it had been shielding evidence of organized theft from 127 homeowners. The scope of her violations made my head spin. Civil accountability for mishandling funds, potential criminal charges for fraud, and automatic dismissal from the board once a conflict of interest was proven. This had moved far beyond a property dispute. Now it was about corruption, embezzlement, and a woman so desperate to cover her tracks that she'd resort to psychological warfare against anyone who threatened to expose her. I printed every document, saved copies to 3 different cloud accounts, and immediately forwarded the full file to attorney Amanda Sterling with a note, urgent review required possible criminal implications. The balance of power had shifted. Brenda believed she was battling a divorced electrician over where to place a trash can. What she was really facing was the unmasking of a fraud scheme that could put her behind bars and drain her family's finances. By Tuesday morning, I stood at my kitchen window, watching her try yet again to ram into my concrete barricade. Escalade now bore more than $1,200 in damage, while my trash can remained planted like a monument to her arrogance. But for the first time since this feud began, my mind wasn't on trash cans, HOA rules, or her daily demolition attempts. It was on justice, the safety of our neighborhood, and the satisfaction of watching a bully realize that sometimes their targets bite back harder than expected. The real battle was only just beginning. That evening, my garage shifted from a casual workshop into a full-scale command center worthy of Pentagon planners. I cleared the benches, set up folding tables, and placed 5 mismatched chairs around an evidence board I'd built, complete with red string and construction paper straight out of a crime drama. By 7 p.m. sharp, the team had gathered. Mrs. Olivia arrived first, gripping a thermos of jasmine tea, nerves written on her face but determination in her eyes. Jim Torres followed, still in his maintenance uniform, tools clinking at his belt. Patricia Lopez came with a pile of HOA financial records she'd pulled from board files. Finally, Dale Kowalski strolled in with a box of donuts. grinning as if we were planning a party instead of uncovering municipal corruption. All right, I said, pinning the last timeline chart to the wall. Here's the situation. The evidence looked like something out of a federal probe. $23,000 in questionable contracts, 7 documented conflicts of interest, 47 recorded harassment incidents, and 1 Escalade with mounting dents and scratches rolling. Proof of Brenda's unraveling. Patricia let out a low whistle as she studied the numbers. I knew those contracts didn't sit right, but I didn't expect it to be this organized. Every time I'd raised questions about the spending, Brenda had rehearsed explanations ready to go, polished and detailed. Dale inspected the damage. Photos with the eye of a mechanic. That bumper alone will run $2,000 to fix. And with the alignment off, she burned through tires in no time. Your concrete setup's turning her SUV into an expensive lesson. We spent the next hour shaping a coordinated strike. Jim would keep tabs on Brenda, documenting any retaliation. Mrs. Olivia would manage door-to-door efforts to rally neighbors. Patricia would work the inside angle, building support among board members for a financial audit. Dale would act as technical consultant, verifying evidence tied to construction and repairs. The legal path required careful timing. Amanda Sterling had confirmed we had strong cases for harassment, financial fraud, and board misconduct, but the key would be patience. Move too soon, and Brenda might erase evidence. Wait too long, and she might pull off her cover-up. My 22 years as an electrician had taught me this. Complicated problems need layered solutions. Fighting HOA abuse with only property rights arguments was like trying to fix a short by swapping one fuse. You have to address the whole system. Our strategy would hit on 4 fronts at once. Legal action through criminal charges and lawsuits. Social pressure through neighbor organizing and petitions. Political pressure via media and municipal oversight. And financial pressure with audits and contract challenges. By Wednesday morning, the community campaign was in motion. Armed with professional handouts and airtight documentation, I started knocking on doors throughout Pinewood Gardens. The reaction was overwhelming. 89 residents signed for property rights. 34 demanded immediate financial audits. And 12 even volunteered to testify at the board meeting. Mrs. Rodriguez on Maple Street almost slammed the door in my face until I explained what was happening. 5 minutes later, she was scribbling her name down, muttering angry Spanish words that didn't sound flattering toward Brenda. That woman tried to fine me for leaving my garbage can out 15 minutes early, she snapped. 15 minutes? What? Is she timing us with a stopwatch? The opposition map revealed a clear pattern. Brenda's staunch supporters were older homeowners who had long benefited from her selective rule enforcement. The undecided group were mostly newer residents, too scared of retaliation or worried about property values. Everyone else? They were ready for accountability. Media. Prep consumed 3 full days of meticulous planning. Channel 7's investigative team, known for exposing city corruption, had reporter Sarah Kim on the case. She had already covered several HOA scandals around the metro. The press kit came loaded with polished timeline graphics, expert legal commentary, and a tightly cut 12-minute reel highlighting Brenda's growing string of collision attempts. The social media rollout spread far quicker than I'd expected. Within 4 days, the Pinewood Gardens Transparency Facebook group had gained 67 new members, as neighbors chimed in with their own accounts of selective enforcement, intimidation, and shady financial practices. One clip in particular, a time-lapse of Brenda's morning ritual set to circus music, took off across the local suburban network. Meanwhile, my concrete trash can remain both a running gag and hard evidence. By Thursday morning, crash number 53 had taken place, leaving one of her headlights dangling like a chipped tooth. The neighborhood kids started showing. up at the bus stop earlier just to catch the daily demolition derby. Emma told me her classmates were calling her place the house with the trash can that won't die. Tyler, ever the entrepreneur, was charging 50 cents for classmates to watch the compilation video on his phone. Word was spreading beyond our subdivision faster than gossip at a church potluck by Sunday night. Everything was lined up. Board meeting set for Tuesday evening. Media interviews locked in for Wednesday. Criminal complaints prepped for Thursday. 118 residents pledged to attend. 17 signed up to speak during the public comments. The coalition was solid, the proof undeniable, and Brenda didn't have a clue what was about to hit her. It was time to drop the hammer. But the weekend before our planned showdown, Brenda completely unraveled. Desperation has its own smell-burnt coffee, mixed with nervous sweat, and she radiated it from every move. She must have sensed the trap closing because her harassment escalated from petty to criminal faster than her Escalade slamming into my concrete barricade. Late Saturday night, the hiss of spray paint yanked me awake. Through the bedroom window, I spotted a crouched figure by the trash can, caught in the glare of the motion lights. By the time I grabbed my phone and stumbled outside, they were gone. What remained was sloppy orange graffiti across the concrete, spelling out one word: move. The upside to spray paint on concrete, it pressure washes off in half a minute. Upside to security cameras, they capture everything in crisp detail, including the license plate of a pearl white. Escalade parked 3 houses down during the incident. Monday raised the stakes again. The gas company showed up after receiving an anonymous complaint accusing me of suspicious digging that might endanger underground lines. The inspector, polite but thorough, spent 2 hours scanning the property before confirming the obvious no. Holes, no violations, no issues. Honestly, he said while loading his gear, whoever called this in either needs glasses or a psychiatric check. There's no excavation anywhere here. The real sign of Brenda's panic surfaced Tuesday morning. At the hardware store, Jim Torres found me, his weathered face heavy with concern. Marcus, he said, she hired a private security firm to watch your place, Riverside Security. I know the owner's cousin. $200 a day over? A trash can. The woman's lost her damn mind. But surveillance works both ways. My upgraded system had already caught her late-night photo sessions, her drive-bys, and every jittery move as she unraveled like a bargain bin extension cord. All of it preserved in high def for the record. What truly set me off came Wednesday. Emma returned home upset, having overheard Brenda tell another parent that certain bad influences and inappropriate role models were harming the neighborhood kids. The racial undertones weren't even subtle. The implications for my custody battle hit me instantly. That night, I brought in Beth Morrison, a retired police detective turned harassment investigator. For $200 a day, I now had professional documentation of Brenda's stalking, along with testimony from someone trained to recognize escalation and assess threats. The sabotage didn't stop. Later in the week, someone poured what appeared to be battery acid on my concrete trash can. It left a faint stain, but structurally, the fortress still stood. Anonymous complaints started pouring into the city, targeting everything from the length of my grass to supposed issues with my electrical permits. Fake one-star reviews appeared on my business's Google page faster than I could report them for removal. But the real shock came on Friday evening. Tyler was outside tuning up his bike in the driveway when he spotted something strange attached to the underside of my work truck, a small black device with blinking lights magnetically. Secured in place, Dad, he shouted, his voice edged with panic. What's this thing under your truck? It was a GPS tracker, a high-end model, easily worth $300. And absolutely illegal when placed without permission. I snapped photos from every angle before carefully detaching it. then drove straight to the police station. Officer Derek Martinez took my statement with the weary look of a man who had seen this level of harassment escalate before. "Mr. Holloway," he said, "this isn't just a neighborhood squabble anymore. We're talking criminal activity, unauthorized surveillance, stalking, harassment. We're opening a case file that could bring serious charges." Meanwhile, the insurance fraud scheme was unraveling. Brenda had filed a $3,200 claim, insisting road hazard damage had wrecked her vehicle on a public street, not on my property. The problem for her was that my Ring camera footage told a different story. Clear video of her deliberately ramming my trash can from multiple angles. Week when State Farm's investigators scheduled an interview, I was ready. I brought a full evidence package, 53 documented collision attempts, signed witness statements, a video compilation, and a professional damage analysis. His reaction was instant and sharp. "Ma'am, this isn't road hazard damage," he told her. "This is intentional property destruction using a luxury vehicle. We're denying your claim and forwarding this to our fraud division for criminal review." Meanwhile, community pressure was rising like steam inside a boiler. Our neighborhood Facebook group had grown to 94 members, each sharing new stories of Brenda's antics. Mrs. Patterson complained of harassment over her rose bush. The Johnsons on Oak Street had received violation notices for their kids. Sidewalk chalk. Even Gerald Thornfield was quietly pulling away from her dot by Saturday morning. She made her 57th collision attempt, this time ripping the entire bumper off her SUV, which she had to collect from my driveway. The sight of her in business attire, crouching to pick up plastic shards while neighbors peeked from their curtains, would have been comical if it weren't so pitiful. By Sunday evening, I had the complete case file, ready criminal acts documented, witness testimony notarized, fraudulent claims exposed, and a united neighborhood standing by. Tuesday's HOA board meeting wouldn't just be a confrontation. It would be a public takedown. Brenda had no idea what was coming, but Monday morning, just 12 hours before the showdown, she tried one last desperate play. Gerald Thornfield called an emergency closed-door session, citing escalating liability concerns and community safety risks. His voicemail sounded like he'd spent the morning gargling gravel and panicked. The so-called emergency meeting was nothing but damage control. 3 board members huddled in the community center office while the HOA's attorney, Harold Masterson from Prescott and Associates, billed $400 an hour to figure out just how deep they'd sunk. Through the blinds, I caught glimpses of frantic hand gestures and Brenda flailing documents like white flags. Inside, Patricia Lopez texted me live updates. "Brenda's accusing you of making terrorist threats. She's pushing for emergency powers to confiscate dangerous modifications. Harold looks like he'd rather defend serial killers. The cover-up was just as sloppy as her driveway collisions. Someone had backdated conflict of interest. Forms for Whitmore construction, but the digital email timestamps painted the real picture. You can't fake ethics compliance after the fact, especially when the original votes are locked into public meeting minutes." Meanwhile, the insurance probe was accelerating faster than Brenda's SUV hitting my reinforced wall. Investigator Maria Santos had already subpoenaed HOA financials, board minutes, and every correspondence between Brenda and their insurance provider. The paper trail was glaring like a slow-motion train wreck, impossible to ignore. Tuesday afternoon delivered the most startling revelation yet. Richard Whitmer, Brenda's husband, called me personally. That in itself took more bravery than I expected from a man who had been forced to watch his wife wreck their finances piece by piece. "Marcus," he said, voice trembling just above a whisper, "this has to end. She's burned through $8,000 on attorneys, surveillance, and fixing vehicles. Our insurance dropped us. Contracts for the business are being canceled." "Tell me What would it take to make this disappear? For a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost, Richard, I answered. Your wife stalked my family, vandalized my property, committed insurance fraud, and stole from 127 homeowners. This doesn't vanish with a check and a sorry. The true sign of their desperation came 2 hours before the board meeting. Brenda filed an emergency restraining order built entirely on fabricated evidence, phony, threatening voicemails, doctored photos of supposed confrontations, and witness statements from people who simply didn't exist. The petition was so sloppy that Judge Patricia Williams dismissed it outright without even setting a hearing. Mrs. Whitmore, the judge said firmly, these recordings are clearly altered, the photographs staged, and these so-called witnesses appear to be imaginary. Submitting false evidence is contempt of court. Take this as your one and only warning that Brenda's legal troubles were multiplying quicker than her stage collisions. The state insurance commissioner had assigned investigator Maria Santos to construct a criminal fraud case. The district attorney's office was already weighing stalking and harassment charges, and the IRS had been given financial records showing unreported income from construction deals. By 6 p.m., the parking lot of the community center looked like Black Friday at Best Buy. Cars filled both sides of Maple Street, neighbors walking from blocks away carrying folding chairs and handmade signs. Channel 7's news van rolled in at exactly 5:30, followed by Channel 12 and a Metro Weekly reporter who had been tracking the saga. Inside, the tension was suffocating. The room, meant for 40, was jammed with 118 residents, with overflow spilling into the hallway. The heavy mix of nervous sweat and burnt coffee made the air nearly chewable. Brenda showed up late, flanked by Harold Masterson, looking like she'd rather vanish off the planet. Her usual navy blazer was swapped for funereal black, and her shaking hands could be seen from across the room. At the same time, Gerald Thornfield kept fiddling with his tie as if it were tightening into a noose. Their attempt at intimidation backfired instantly. Masterson's opening remarks about frivolous complaints and disruptive residents were cut short when Mrs. Olivia stood up, holding a stack of signed witness statements. "Excuse me," she said in careful English, "but which one of us has been committing insurance fraud and stealing money?" The room broke into applause and uneasy laughter. 17 neighbors had signed up to speak, each carrying proof of Brenda's harassment, shady finances, or selective enforcement. Together, the evidence filled 3 bankers' boxes: collision, footage, contract breakdowns, even receipts from filed criminal complaints. But the real thunderclap came later. At exactly 6:45. Just as Brenda tried dodging questions about the Whitmore construction contracts, Officer Derek Martinez walked in holding an official folder. "Apologies for the interruption," he announced to the suddenly silent crowd, "but I have a warrant to serve for insurance fraud and stalking charges." The color drained from Brenda's face faster than coolant from her wrecked Escalade. Masterson leaned over, urgently whispering legal advice, while Thornfield looked like he was about to clutch his chest. It was game over. Checkmate. The scene that followed was nothing short of a public execution. Every single one of Pinewood Gardens' 127 homeowners had crammed into that tiny room designed for 40, while 15 reporters aimed cameras like it was a presidential debate. The air conditioning failed against the heat of the crowd, and the buzzing fluorescent lights overhead felt like angry hornets closing in on their prey. I had positioned myself in the 3rd row, seated between Mrs. Olivia and Jim Torres, with my concrete trash can rolled in beside the podium as exhibit at its symbolism couldn't have been louder. That 60-pound monument to her reckless stupidity had become the star witness in what was about to unfold. Brenda sat at the board table, looking like she'd prefer a root canal without anesthesia. Her trademark navy blazer was gone, replaced by a somber black one. Every few seconds, her eyes darted toward the exit like an animal testing escape routes. Harold Masterson leaned in close, whispering frantic legal counsel, while Gerald Thornfield, soaked through his shirt, looking like a man awaiting execution. The moment Officer Martinez walked in holding that warrant folder, the entire atmosphere shifted. Silence swept the room, broken only by the mechanical hum of the news cameras and the sharp, repetitive click of Brenda's pen against the table, a jittery staccato that could have been mistaken for Morse code spelling out help. Gerald attempted to restore order, his voice cracking like a nervous teenager's. Will now take public comments regarding recent concerns. I rose first, presentation boards in hand, stepping forward with the precision of a prosecutor addressing a jury. The room was so quiet the faint buzz of the exit sign's transformer was audible. Ladies and gentlemen, I began my voice, carrying cleanly across the packed space. This isn't about garbage bins. It isn't about HOA bylaws, property lines, or community standards. This is about honesty, accountability, and putting an end to corruption before it destroys our neighborhood. I laid out the evidence one step at a time. 57 documented collision attempts, each one caught in crystal clear footage. A GPS tracker illegally attached to my car. Spray paint vandalism recorded on security cameras. Fraudulent insurance. Claims amounting to felonies, but the real blow came with the financial records. With a barred projector, I displayed the contract breakdown showing $23,400, funneled straight from HOA dues into Brenda's family business account. Every month, I announced, eyes sweeping across the stunned crowd. You've been paying. Higher fees not for improvements, but to line Mrs. Whitmore's own construction company's pockets. Gasps rippled through the room as I revealed 7 separate contracts, all undisclosed conflicts of interest and all violations of state nonprofit law. Then came the compilation video, 12 straight minutes of Brenda's reckless crash attempts, set against the crunch and grind of mangled metal. The audience reacted with gasps, uneasy laughter, and disbelief as her actions played across the screen. Finally, I delivered the line I'd been preparing for weeks. I turned toward her, the cameras trained on us. Double quotes, Mrs. Whitmore. I said, steady and clear. You've wasted $3,400 on lawyers, destroyed a $60,000 vehicle, committed insurance fraud, and stalked my family all over a $23 trash can. But the greater crime is the $47,000 you've stolen from this community through your family's construction business. The room exploded. Neighbors who had long grumbled about rising HOA fees suddenly realized exactly where their money had gone. Mrs. Rodriguez leapt up, shouting in rapid-fire Spanish that clearly wasn't praise. Teenagers from Elm Street clapped like they were at a live show. Brenda's reaction was even better than I had imagined. She sprang from her chair like a jack-in-the-box, her carefully managed composure cracking wide open. This is harassment. She screeched, her voice so shrill it probably set off every dog in a 3-block radius. These people don't care about property values or standards. They come into good neighborhoods and think rules don't matter. The racial undertones in her words hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Channel 7's cameras captured every word, every expression, every unraveling moment of her breakdown. Mrs. Olivia audibly gasped when Brenda jabbed a finger at her, ranting about certain elements ruining the community. Harold Masterson scrambled to control his client, but she was beyond listening. She lunged for my evidence boards, trying to rip them apart, only to be gently restrained by Jim Torres and 2 other neighbors out on live television. Brenda was falling apart. Mascara streaked down her cheeks in black rivers as she screamed, "I built this community." Meanwhile, Officer Martinez calmly scribbled notes for his report. Unfazed by the chaos unfolding before him, I had safeguarded property values, I had upheld the standards. And this was the thanks I got for giving everything to preserve the neighborhood's integrity. Gerald Thornfield called for a recess, but no one budged. This was better than reality TV, juicier than any soap opera, and far more satisfying than seeing your worst rival trip on a rake. Amid the uproar, Patricia Lopez rose to her feet and voiced the motion everyone had been anticipating. I proposed the immediate suspension of Brenda Whitmore from the board, pending a criminal probe and full financial audit. The vote passed without hesitation 4-0. Brenda abstained, but only because she was already handcuffed to Officer Martinez's chair. Justice delivered, stone cold, with a generous serving of public disgrace. The fallout began like a line of dominoes, each piece toppling perfectly in order. Within 2 days of that explosive board meeting, Brenda's life collapsed faster than the suspension on her Escalade, hitting back-to-back potholes. By Tuesday morning, she submitted a formal resignation, packaged in 2 bitter lines of text accusing the board of hostility and personal attacks. By Thursday, the district attorney pressed insurance, fraud charges that carried up to 6 months in jail and fines of $5,000. Friday brought the revocation of her insurance license, followed swiftly by the suspension of Whitmore Construction's contractor certification. The financial reckoning struck hard and fast. The emergency HOA audit, conducted by Patterson and Associates CPAs, uncovered $47,000 in padded costs and shady contracts. By Christmas, every homeowner held a refund check of $170, the sweetest holiday surprise Pinewood Gardens had ever known. Richard Whitmore called me one last time, his voice stripped of fight. "The civil settlement check is in the mail," he said quietly. $12,500 as agreed. Brenda asked me to tell you she's moving to Florida to stay with her sister. For a flicker of a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. Then I remembered. The GPS tracker, the bogus insurance claims, and the relentless harassment my family had endured. Some lessons are costly. This one took everything from them. The shift in governance was extraordinary. Patricia Lopez swept the special election for board president with unanimous support, running on promises of transparency and genuine community involvement. The new board introduced conflict of interest disclosures, monthly financial reporting, and open contractor bidding policies that could make a city council envious. Our very first community project under this reformed leadership was a playground renovation funded entirely with recovered embezzlement money. Watching Emma and Tyler help sketch designs for the new equipment, side by side with neighbors who once whispered about our so-called troublemaking family, felt like vindication made tangible. The legal impact reached beyond our neighborhood. Holloway versus Pinewood Gardens. The HOA case went on to be referenced in a dozen other property rights disputes across Ohio. Soon after, the state legislature enacted the HOA Accountability Act, which mandated full financial transparency and routine audit standards that insurance investigators praised as the new benchmark for municipal oversight. Channel 7's investigative series earned a regional Emmy for uncovering corruption in the suburbs. And reporter Sarah Kim still reaches out to me now and then for expert insight on HOA reform bills. The crash footage itself has racked up over 200,000 views on YouTube, sparking copycat resistance movements in neighborhoods from Toledo down to Cincinnati. That concrete trash can of mine became a local legend. It now sits in the community center lobby as a permanent display, complete with a bronze plaque that reads, "Property Rights Protected, 2023. New homeowners hear the entire story during their orientation sessions, and visiting contractors frequently ask to see the famous indestructible trash can that toppled a corrupt board." But beyond the symbol, the real achievement was the restoration of our community spirit. Every September, the Concrete Can Days festival draws families from 3 nearby subdivisions, offering bounce houses, BBQ contests, and workshops on homeowner rights. Attendance hit over 800 last year, turning what was once our hardship into both a celebration and a tradition. The settlement money also allowed me to create a scholarship fund. So far, 4 students have gone to college through the Marcus Holloway Property Rights Scholarship, which prioritizes applicants who show creative problem solving when faced with institutional resistance, essentially rewarding young people bold enough to challenge injustice. My kids, Emma and Tyler, gained lessons in principled defiance no textbook could match. Emma's college essay about taking on corruption with concrete proof secured her acceptance into 3 journalism schools. Meanwhile, Tyler launched his own YouTube channel called Suburban Justice, where he covers HOA battles across the Midwest with the drive of a budding investigative journalist. What I didn't expect was how much personal healing came out of all this. My custody evaluation took a sharp turn for the better once the community publicly stood by us. The judge even noted that kids thrive when parents model how to defend their values and protect their family through lawful, constructive means rather than aggression or giving up. On top of that, my electrical contracting business began thriving thanks to referrals from neighbors who had witnessed my careful documentation and strategic planning. As it turns out, the same patient problem solving that works in HOA fights also works in complicated wiring projects. My reputation for delivering results the right way opened up opportunities across the county. Sometimes David really does topple Goliath, but only if David shows up prepared, backed by evidence, all eyes, and about 60 pounds of steel reinforced concrete. Share your own HOA horror story in the comments. And together, let's build a database of corruption and help each other fight back. Subscribe if you want more stories where ordinary people win by combining preparation, patience, and perfect timing. After all, justice tastes best when served with creativity and community at your side. Thanks for tuning in to HOA Stories, where the HOO Karens finally meet their match. If this tale had you cheering or cringing, hit like, drop your reaction in the comments, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next outrageous HOA Zone Stories.